It's showtime. What's up, good people? And welcome to the Frank Harris Show, the biggest, the baddest, and the best show on earth. I forgot to add also the most provocative show on earth. What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? How's everyone doing today? As we continue to ascend, get followers, continue to show love, we appreciate all of the love. Let's jump right into this. A lot of good things to talk about today. I want to talk about, first and foremost, my Dallas Cowboys drubbing yesterday by the Detroit Lions. I believe the score was 47-9, I believe it was. Look, I'm a Cowboy fan. I rant and rave about the Cowboys. I'm not a delusional Cowboy fan like some of us are, but I've said this continually, and I will continue to say this ad nauseum. The Dallas Cowboys will not win as long as Dak Prescott is the quarterback. Dak Prescott is, to me, one of the more overrated quarterbacks ever. He's so overrated. And look, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Dak has great stats. And the reason why Dak has great stats historically is because the Cowboys always get off to a slow start, okay? They're down significantly in games, okay? Teams up at halftime by a lot of points. And so what happens is teams then play prevent defense in the second half. Dak ends up throwing for 400 yards because the team is playing prevent defense. His stats get run all the way up, and the Cowboys ultimately lose, okay? This is the Dak Prescott scenario. And so we continue to look at his stats and all of this kind of garbage. He's never won in the playoffs for the most part. I think he won like one playoff game. The guy needs to go. Dak Prescott, and now he's the highest paid player in the NFL, which is an absolute, it's beyond a joke, okay? Got his money now, and he's proven to be the quarterback that I knew he was, and he will always be. You will not win with Dak Prescott as your quarterback. Dak Prescott, he's not bad, but he's not a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. That's out the gate, okay? 2, defense, way overrated. Micah Parsons, way overrated, okay? Defense, decent, okay? Zimmer came this year. Everybody thought the defense was going to continue to be great. No. Parsons, good player, very good player. Not in the league of the Watt brother, TJ Watt, not in the league of Myles Garrett, who plays over with the Cleveland Browns. He's not in that league of pass rusher, which he consistently wants to be compared to. But he's a good player, right? But there was Lawrence Taylor comparisons before. Stop. Good player. Some playmakers, right? Diggs is not bad, but you don't have good guys in the trenches, defensive end, defensive tackles, guys getting after the quarterback. Super overrated defense. And Zimmer's doing terrible, okay? Now, you ain't winning in the NFL with no running game, okay? I didn't understand this. Pollard left. They let Pollard walk out the door. And then you brought back Ezekiel Elliott, who we saw there was nothing left in the tank with Ezekiel when he was playing with the Patriots. So I don't get it, okay? You have no running game. You ain't going to win without a running game, okay? So no running game, an overrated quarterback, and an overrated defense. And by the way, I get it, Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones is old. Jerry Jones wants to win another ring, as he's a very, very old owner, right? You've constructed this team. You have guys like CeeDee Lamb, all-pro wide receiver on the offensive side. You kind of had to re-sign Dak unless you were going to restart. Because ultimately in the NFL, it's not like in the NBA where there's significant player movement. It isn't, right? So I don't know where you're going to find a quarterback as good as Dak, probably. All right. Maybe Baker Mayfield may have been out there last year before he re-signed with Tampa. But I'm not sure. He's not a championship caliber quarterback either. All right. But, and then if you draft a quarterback, there's somewhat of a reset and you feel like you're rebuilding, and Jerry Jones can't see himself doing that at this age, I'm sure. So I get it. You had to re-sign Dak. You had to give CeeDee Lamb all the money that he probably deserved. CeeDee deserved it. Dak doesn't deserve to be the highest paid player in the NFL, but his contract came up right in the chronology of, the next guy's up, the next guy gets the big money. Somebody will pass him, right? Soon as free agency begins next year, the next quarterback up will pass Dak. So I get it. So you had overpaid Dak. You did. So now you have overpaid Dak, okay, on a team that's underachieving. And the question is it time to blow it up? Is it time to blow it up? And before I even talk about blowing it up, Mike McCarthy is terrible, okay? And again, do you want to start with a new program? Do you want to start with a new coach? You know, he's trying to kind of hold it together, okay? He's trying to hold a dam together, stitch it together, right? But ultimately, the dam has broke. The dam has broken. So guess what? You got to get rid of McCarthy, okay? And if you get rid of McCarthy, the question is, do you bring in a guy like Belichick or do you wait until the season's over, okay? You have an interim coach. Maybe you put Zimmer as the interim coach. He was a pretty successful coach with the Minnesota Vikings defensive coordinator. You make him the interim guy, and then you go coach hunting in the offseason where you have more options available. Or do you bring in Belichick? Experienced guy, obviously won a lot of Super Bowls, has not been able to win without Brady, okay, in that moribund, terrible New England Patriots organization over the last few years, and he was a part of that. But do you bring a guy like that in? High profile guy, disciplinarian, great defensive mind, probably the greatest defensive mind of all time. Do you bring him in, right? Or do you wait, again, fire the coach now, McCarthy, and wait till next year? We shall see. But what I do know is this. The Dallas Cowboys, okay, are in trouble, and the Dallas Cowboys are not close to being a championship caliber team, and you're not going to get close to that with these guys. So I'm sorry, Jerry Jones, but you know what you got to do, man? You got to blow this thing up no matter how old you are. You got to trade Dak, okay, and try to get in a trade for Dak an earlier pick, okay? So some team that has an early pick, I'm sure will take Dak. He's an experienced quarterback, etc. You get an early pick, and I'm gonna tell you who you should. Well, I'm not saying you should take this guy, right? Because it comes along with a lot of baggage. But Deion Sanders' son, Shador Sanders, okay, with all the hype, Deion played for the Cowboys. The Cowboys, the number one organization economically, brand-wise, in all of sports, okay? You add Shador and all he brings from a marketing perspective. You take the Dallas Cowboys. That's a match, perfect match from a marketing perspective. And look, Shador has shown flashes that he can be an NFL quarterback. Now, is he a franchise level Super Bowl quarterback? I'm not sure about that part of it, but you got to blow this thing up and restart again. All right, Cowboys. So as much as I love the Cowboys, as much as I want the Cowboys to win, sometime the harsh reality has to set in. And the harsh reality is you ain't winning, Jerry Jones, with these guys and the way the team is currently configured. All right. 3-3 going into the bye week, get rid of McCarthy, and let's start the rebuild. It's tough to say, but that's what the reality of the situation is. So I want to switch gears now. Okay. From football to basketball. There was an episode last night, Knicks playing against Minnesota. As we know, there was a big trade that happened recently with the Knicks in Minnesota. DiVincenzo, Julius Randle left New York. They're in Minnesota now. The Knicks pick up Karl Anthony Towns. A lot of people thought it was a fair trade, but there seemed to be some bad blood. It felt like between, even during the trade, Randle and DiVincenzo leaving New York. It felt like they still wanted to be there. I just felt that energy that they didn't really want to be traded, and they were not very happy to be going to Minnesota. But I guess they also felt unwanted in New York. So I felt like they felt unwanted, but they wish they would have been there. But DiVincenzo, of the two, it was interesting because they've made the Knicks into, the Villanova of the NBA because they have so many Villanova players that they have playing for the Knicks. They had DiVincenzo, Brunson. Jalen Brunson was a Villanova guy. And all these guys won a national championship together, at least once. Some of them even won two. Josh Hart is a Villanova guy. And Bridges, right? Mikal Bridges is another Villanova guy. Four really important pieces that the Knicks had on their roster, Villanova guys. And maybe that was the Josh Hart, the Jalen Brunson effect, because Jalen Brunson is the best guy on the team. But let me tell you guys something. The Knicks are MAFIA, okay? Let me tell you a little bit about the Knicks MAFIA. So anyway, the incident was DiVincenzo was on the free throw line. He was yelling over to the Knicks bench, I guess at Tibbs, the head coach. and Rick Brunson, who's Jalen Brunson's dad, stepped in too. And then there was some conversation about this is how things go and you really the guy running the team and all this kind of nonsense, right? So DiVincenzo is going at Rick Brunson. He's going at Tibbs. And the irony of it all is Jalen Brunson and DiVincenzo are best friends. DiVincenzo, I believe, was the groomsman in his wedding. So DiVincenzo, Jalen Brunson, best friends. DiVincenzo yelling during the game on the free throw line at Tibbs, the head coach, and Rick Brunson. Rick Brunson, who's Jalen Brunson's dad, approaches DiVincenzo after the game, and it's like, yo, that was some sucker, what you did, and it was like a beef, and it was not, like almost gonna be a fight. It wasn't that. And Jalen Brunson was holding his boy DiVincenzo, so he's in an odd situation. His father, who kind of is the person that molded and guided his steps with his best friend. But obviously there's some beef there. But let me just give you some history about the Knicks Mafia, okay? The guy running the Knicks is a guy by the name of Leon Rose, president of operations. He's the guy running the Knicks. And there's a guy behind the scenes by the name of Worldwide West. Worldwide West is one of the most influential shadow figures in basketball, right? He's started off, I believe, as Michael Jordan's assistant. And I've gone through this before, but he's a legendary guy in basketball, okay? He was behind the scenes, pulling strings, making moves. Leon Rose was a childhood friend of his. Leon Rose was an attorney, right? West grew up in Camden. Leon Rose in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, I believe it was. West was given all of the high-level players that he had access to Leon Rose. Leon Rose was the manager. Leon Rose went to CAA and became a leader of the management team at CAA as an agent, obviously. And West was the guy behind the scenes. He was Michael Jordan's guy at one point, was Allen Iverson's guy, was LeBron's guy. He was the guy, right? He's Calipari's guy. Again, the guy controls players. The guy's a serious power player in the NBA. So now Leon Rose leaves the agency business. He goes and he's now head of the Knicks. He brings West with him now. So West is with the Knicks as well, okay? I believe Leon Rose's first client, Temple basketball player, was Rick Brunson. Okay, Rick Brunson was one of the first clients for Leon Rose. I believe West probably put it together. He was playing at Temple in Philly, and Rick Brunson, had an NBA career. Probably played about 13 years, 12 years, but for like 11 or 12 teams, was a journeyman. You know what I mean? But now he works as an assistant coach for the Knicks. Tibbs is their coach, right? Tibbs is the coach, and Calipari is their college coach, right? So West used to send all of his players to Calipari at Memphis. Like he sent Derrick Rose to Memphis, all the players that he controlled. Tyreek Evans, he sent them to Memphis. He sent a lot of the basketball players then when Cal went to Kentucky, a lot of those great players. West was the person doing that. So the college coach that they utilize in their family, in their mob, in their crew is Calipari. The NBA head coach is Tibbs. They love Tibbs. And then, Worldwide West and Leon Rose, they kind of run the show. Okay. And so hence when Jalen Brunson signed with the Knicks, everybody knew that was going to happen. His father's Rick Brunson, right? His father's old agent and their family, right, run the Knicks. So he came to the Knicks. Okay. Now they re-signed Tibbs, who's their guy on the coaching side. Okay. And so now they brought all these Villanova guys to appease the son, right? Because the father now is part of the staff and he's behind the scenes making moves. And they bring all these Villanova players in, okay? So that's how the Knicks organization is run. Now, in comes Karl-Anthony Towns. I said this, if you look on the podcast forever, that eventually Karl-Anthony Towns was going to be a Knick. I knew he would be a Knick at some point. Look, he was represented by Leon Rose, who's the president of the Knicks. He played for John Calipari, who's their college coach at Kentucky. Played for Calipari, who's their guy, and Karl-Anthony Towns loves Calipari. When he came out of college, they pushed him over to Leon Rose, who at the time was an agent, right, with West, Worldwide West. Okay. Now, once Leon Rose left the agency business to run the Knicks, Karl-Anthony Towns at some point was coming. We knew it was going to happen, right? But it just had to be the timing. They had to get the assets to make the trade. They needed to make it happen. But again, he's a part of the crew. He's a part of the family. He's in the family. La Familia. It is what it is. So Karl Anthony Towns is now in the fold. So this completed, right? The whole restructure of the Knicks. Okay. The Leon Rose, Worldwide West, Thibodeau, Rick Brunson, Jalen Brunson, and now Karl Anthony Towns. The family's intact. You add the Villanova guys who Jalen Brunson loves, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, and now it's complete. And guess what? DiVincenzo is the odd man out, and he probably feels a way about it, but that's just how this game goes. There's a lot of politics and things going on behind the scenes that the average individual just doesn't know. And that's what's happening with the Knicks. So I think the Knicks, with the addition of Karl Anthony Towns, man, formidable. Very, very formidable team in not just the East, but in the NBA. All right, I think that team is championship caliber. But we'll see how it plays out. All right, but that's what's happening with the Knicks. That's what's happening with the Knicks. So look, as we talk about these topics, sometimes I jump in from sport to sport. Let's now go into women's basketball. Okay, we're in the finals right now. You have some star power, right? You got the Liberty playing against the Lynx, two very good teams. Nafisha Collier, very good player. Ionescu, Brianna Stewart, Collier is very good for the Lynx. Ionescu, Brianna Stewart, very good players, as we know, for the Liberty. Not the same star power as Caitlin Clark, Asia Wilson in that Las Vegas team that won 2 in a row, but we got the championship. And it got me to thinking, okay? The Nike just signed the great, right, Juju Watkins. Juju Watkins is a phenomenal player, went to Sierra Canyon High School, National Player of the Year player, signed a Nike deal after she finished high school, I believe it was the timing of it, right before she went to USC. Went to USC and had a storybook first year, right? Was big time scorer, player of the year caliber player in the Pac-12, national All-American player. Real deal, okay? Juju Watkins is the real deal, probably preseason best player in college basketball this year, okay? Nike just re-upped her deal. First deal was for a year to see how it went. She exceeded probably all expectations, had an amazing year. She reminds me of a Carmelo Anthony, okay? Like a female Carmelo Anthony. Scoring machine, right? Inside, outside, very Carmelo Anthony-ish. But in my opinion, she's the second best prospect in the women's basketball game behind Caitlin Clark, okay? And the WNBA right now is trying to run with this Caitlin Clark Angel Reese thing, right? It's black versus white. We get it. It's Bird versus Magic. I've said this before, and we love that, right? It's Indiana versus Chicago, right? Small city with certain mentality as it relates to perception, work ethic, white versus, Chicago, Flash, black Angel Reese. The problem is this, okay? As great as Angel Reese is, she's not close to as good as Caitlin Clark. Let's just call a spade a spade. I love Angel Reese, and you go across black lines, all the black people a lot of them like Angel Reese, and white lines, the white people like Caitlin Clark. The reality is this, okay? Angel Reese can do a good job of her marketing. She can do whatever she wants to do from that perspective, but she ain't as good as Caitlin Clark. She ain't close as good as Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is an MVP caliber player. But what Nike should do is create the Juju Watkins Caitlin Clark rivalry. That's the rivalry to watch. That's the real rivalry, because Juju Watkins has the potential to be the MVP of the WNBA, and so does Caitlin Clark. So for years and years and years to come, I can't wait to Juju Watkins gets to the WNBA, right? And she still has one more year after this year, even, because you have to do 3 years, I believe it is, before you can apply to play in the WNBA, which she should be able to. They need to change the rule for her, because she's wasting her time in college. She needs to go ahead on to the WNBA. But the irony of it is this is the real irony, that probably she can make more money staying in college at USC than in the WNBA, because with NIL deals now, they pay probably more money than the WNBA salaries are. But Juju got a big Nike deal, so I'm pretty sure that will help defray a lot of costs, etc. But I tell you, That's the matchup that I want to see. Okay, I want to see when those two match up. And at that time, Caitlin Clark is going to be, MVP caliber player, great player. She's carrying the league from a marketing, money, brand perspective. But Angel Reese just don't have it. But I want to see Caitlin Clark versus Juju Watkins when Juju comes into the WNBA, excuse me. That's going to be the future of that league. That's Magic Bird, right? That's what's going to take that league to another stratosphere. And as we talk about leagues growing, right? Sports growing based upon rivalry, I got to end on this note. I got to talk about one guy, okay? The great Rafa Nadal. Legendary Spanish tennis player. And they built modern day tennis, the ATP Tour, on a rivalry with the big three. You had Nadal, Federer, Djokovic, right? Big three, different styles, different people. But Nadal's retiring. I believe he's 38 or 39 years old. Injury riddled. So many injuries. He played through injuries. He had a style of tennis that everybody loved. Okay, he was strong left hand because he played lefty. Big biceps, abnormally built tennis guy. Very athletic, very fast. Somewhat of a non-conventional style of play. Was a righty, but his uncle Tony put the tennis racket in his left hand at a very young age and made him a lefty in tennis, which is an advantage. But the guy played tennis the right way. He had the right attitude. I mean, everything you love about tennis, he represented. The work ethic. I think, he one time he threw a racket and his uncle Tony told him at like 12 or 11, if he ever broke another racket or threw a racket, he wouldn't let him play anymore. So he didn't throw his racket. He never had tantrums. He respected the game. He worked incredibly hard. He practiced as hard as he played. I mean, the guy was amazing for the sport. Okay, his fame. Rafa is a very big tennis brand in general, and he also had incredible success. No player has had the amount of success on one surface as he had. He won 14 French Open championships on the clay courts. Okay, there was a time where I believe he was 110-2, right, on clay at the French Open, on the French Open clay, on Roland Garros French Open clay. I mean, 110 wins and 2 losses. I mean, at that point, I remember I said that I thought beating Rafa Nadal at the French Open was the most difficult thing to do in sports. Beating Rafa Nadal at the French Open when he was 110, I believe it was 110-2, was the most difficult thing to do, I thought, in sports, in all the sports, okay? And the rivalry was unbelievable between him, Djokovic, and the great Roger Federer. Djokovic, to me, is the GOAT because Djokovic has 24 slams, Nadal 22, Federer 20. Djokovic is the villain, the bad guy. Nobody likes Djokovic, but he's the GOAT with 24 slams. Federer is the ultimate spokesman for the sport. Iconic. He's made so much money in the sport. Ideal game, one-hand backhand. He was the bridge between the old school tennis players and the new school tennis players. Everybody loved to play like and wanted to emulate. The great Roger Federer, great. So to me, Djokovic is the best. Roger Federer was the greatest ambassador of the game, but everybody loved Nadal. So we're going to miss the great Rafa Nadal, who had an incredible career. He epitomized the work ethic that it takes to go all the way to the top. He respected the sport, and he's, to me, the second best tennis player in the history of the game. I got Djokovic, Nadal, and then Federer. And what he did at the French Open is unparalleled. 14 slams at the French Open out of his 22. He won 14 at the French, which is, dominance beyond dominance. We hope, because he seems like the guy that's so tennis obsessed, it's going to be interesting to see what is his post-tennis look like. Post-tennis life look like. When you look at a guy like Federer, you felt like, he was going to be an ambassador for the sport, but he had other things, other interests. Nadal seemed like he was tennis, and more tennis. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens to the great Rafa Nadal. Salute Nadal, great career, and we wish you the best in your retirement. That said, we're going to wrap up now. Appreciate the love again. Keep supporting, keep subscribing, keep commenting, keep showing love. We appreciate you. The Frank Harris Show, baby. We out. Yes.